Good evening and welcome to North Lanarkshire Live, and it's the second night of our digital Hustings series. Bit of unfortunate news tonight. Paul McGarry, the Liberal Democrats candidate, is unfortunately unable to make it on the show this evening because he's not feeling well. But if you'd like to hear about what the Liberal Democrats are planning for North Lanarkshire or for Scotland in general, please feel free to check out Don Allen on our Hustings that took place last night, which is available on our timeline. But we do have three guests on tonight to talk to us, and just bring up the multicam view, and I have taken up the top square there in a very Hollywood Squares quiz show tonight. We have Paul Mortimer from the Abolish Hollywood Party, we have Alan Melville from Reform UK, and we have Stephanie Callahan from the SNP Party. So we're going to go round in a clockwise fashion. We're going to give you 3 minutes each to give a quick introduction about yourself and what the main thing is your party's standing on in the upcoming election on the 6th of May. So if we could just start with you, Paul.
Me, John, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the names are a bit mixed up there. You're calling me Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul. John. It's John Mortimer, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Well, Abolish, the Scottish Parliament Party, does exactly what it says in the tin. We want to scrap the expensive, divisive, failed Blair-era devolution experiment. And what we are doing at this election is incredibly unique and important. We're giving Scots a historic opportunity to vote against devolution for the first time since Blair's 1997 referendum. The Scottish Parliament now costs well in excess of £100 million to run every single year. That is money spent on lavish salaries, exorbitant expenses and vanity projects for the Hollywood elite at a time when ordinary Scots are suffering from job losses, cuts to public services and SNP tax hikes. And just to give a bit of a breakdown on Holyrood's costs every year, there's roughly £26 million spent on staff salaries, £16 million on parliamentary expenses, £14 million on MSP and office holder salaries, £8.3 million on building maintenance. A few years ago, we paid £1.75 million to upgrade bulbs in the main debating chamber at the cost of £357 per bulb. Those figures were published in an article by Michael Blackley for the Scottish Daily Mail on the 30th of January 2018. To give you some more figures, this time from Scott McNabb, writing in The Scotsman on the 3rd of October 2019, Holyrood cost £116 million to run in 2018 to 19. That's roughly £2.25 million per week. And that article really highlighted the hypocrisy of MSPs. So MSPs at Holyrood, this is a parliament that proclaimed a climate emergency, claimed £220,000 in a single year for car hire. That's 3 times what they claimed for public transport. Patrick Harvey, leader of the Scottish Greens, claimed £30,000 in expenses on top of his 64 grand salary. And it's extremely important to highlight this financial waste and hypocrisy, but there are also deeper constitutional arguments against devolution from a unionist perspective. Devolution has shifted us towards this kind of federalised 4 nations concept of the UK, which views the UK as nothing more than a kind of loose collection of 4 largely self-governing nations, almost like a kind of mini EU. And by taking a stance against devolution, what Abolish is doing is making the case for the UK as a unitary state, the traditional unionist position, and the idea that Britain is a nation in its own right. It's very telling that mainstream politicians and political commentators are now beginning to realise the importance of these arguments. Boris Johnson admitted last year that devolution has been a disaster. Andrew Neil said Scotland has become a banana republic without the bananas. Fraser Nelson wrote recently in The Spectator, and I'll just quote him here, devolution now looks like a chimera. Power was never really devolved to the people. It has instead been hoarded by politicians in Edinburgh. Now, a 2019 panel-based poll for the Sunday Times put support for abolition at 22%. For context, we just need 5 to 6% to elected MSP, so just 1 in every 4 of those to lend us their second vote, and we will win vital list seats off the Greens. So vote Abolish if you want to end the Holyrood gravy train and win a much-needed anti-devolution voice in Scottish politics.
Thanks. And moving on, Alan Melville from the Reform UK Party.
Good evening. I suppose I should start by saying a quote. I like to use quotes. It's C.S. Lewis on tyranny from his Essays on Theology, God in the Dock. And it goes like this. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, because they do so with the approval of their own conscience. They may be more likely to go to heaven, yet at the same time be likelier to make a hell on earth. This very kindness stings with intolerable insult. To be cured against one's will, and cured of a state that we do not consider disease, is to be put on a level with those who have not yet achieved maturity of intellect and those who never shall, to be classed alongside infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. Now that's a powerful quote, but the reason reform exists is because the politicians treat us as infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. We're either too young, too naive to understand the issues, or we're too stupid to understand the statistics which they try and blind us with, or maybe we're just sheep to be herded and fleeced for our taxes and then occasionally led to slaughter when the shepherd decides. At Reform, we don't believe that. We believe we've got to give democracy back to the people. So when it comes to who we are, we're ordinary people. We all have jobs. We all have a normal life. We're not career politicians. Most of our guys have a huge hinterland. We don't have 20-year-olds who come straight out of university very often. And the reason for that is because as we get older, we realise how much we are being messed around with by politicians who won't really tell us the real truth. They'll just tell us the bits they think we want to hear. So when it comes to the Holyrood election on May the 6th, if you want to vote for change, if you are fed up, like we are fed up, with the Tories and the Labour Party and the SNP and the Lib Dems all running around and yelling the same slogans in different ways, and using their focus groups to lead. They don't really lead, they're following the focus group. If you're fed up with that type of politics, you need to vote for a change. And the way to vote for a change is to vote for Reform UK on the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. And finally, but not leastly, Stephanie Callahan of the SNP.
I actually remembered to bring myself off mute, Martin. Can you hear me okay there?
Yeah, not a problem.
Good, thanks. Just after those wee comments there, I thought I would just say I'm not out here to treat people like infants, imbeciles or domestic animals, so just so that people know that. And I'm certainly not a career politician. I was political when I was at university. Actually, Jim Murphy persuaded me to join the Labour Party because I was out there marching against Trident, student loans, poll tax and things like that there. But I very much fell away from politics and I didn't get involved again until the referendum. And I joined the SNP after 2014 there. So I work here, I went to school here in the local area. I live in Hamilton and I'm Uddingston and Bellshill constituency. I'm a local councillor. I have been for just over 5 years now, so things happen quite quickly there. And I believe politics is very, very much about people and communities. It's about well-being, it's about happiness, it's about actually looking after each other. And I think it's about integrity and honesty as well. Politicians often don't get a good name, but there's a lot of really good politicians out there looking to, and from across the parties, looking to actually work hard for people and support people and make life better for people there. So for me, it doesn't matter whether you live in Thornywood, Bellshill, Moss End, Hollytown, Bothwell, Uddingston, wherever it happens to be. I think it's about, this election is about being it's one of the most important that we're going to have in our lifetime. It's certainly the most important election in my lifetime as yet there. And as we look to recover from COVID, which has just been such a tragedy, I think Scotland really needs experienced leadership. And I think Nicola Sturgeon has really stood up and she has forged a way forward that's great. I'm honoured to be standing as a candidate on a manifesto that's about transforming lives. It's about the NHS, education, it's about post-era COVID there. It's about protecting household incomes, looking after vulnerable people, much needed jobs in the area as well, and jobs as well, it's a more holistic view that you're looking at too there. Oops, my daughter's appeared, thank you. Slightly off-putting. And it's a more holistic view, because when you're talking about jobs, you're talking about, for example, training people up who are going to be able to come in and refurbish our homes and make them greener and make them more cost effective and all the rest of it as well there. So it's about the big picture there, I suppose. Looking after our vulnerable, protecting household economies, supporting our businesses as well, looking after our vulnerable, making sure our kids have got a sustainable future, and having a vision for building a better, fairer, more equal country, I suppose, is really what it's all about there. So, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm elected, I'll work tirelessly to make the lives of people in this area better than they are now. That's my goal.
Thank you, Stephanie. So, you're all standing on the 6th of May to be elected to the Scottish Parliament. Now, in the last year, we've seen the country in lockdown, which has had a massive effect on the economy. I don't think there's anyone that's on tonight that would deny that there's tough economic choices ahead for the country. So basically, we're going to start with the question of what is your party's plan to get the Scotland out of, avoid a deeper recession coming out of the COVID crisis. What is your recovery plan? And we'll go to Alan from the Reform UK party first for this question.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting question. Reform has looked quite extensively at the economy and how we are taxed. Our tax code is currently 20,000 pages long. That is far too much and far too complex. And we believe that the best way to solve it is to simplify it, make it easier, and reduce taxes overall. Because if you do that, you're going to release all the entrepreneurship, all the self-employed companies, all the SMEs in this country which desperately need the relief, can get back into business, back doing their jobs, and grow the economy. Once you have a bigger cake, you can slice it up more easily. So we want to grow the cake, and to that end, we have come up with a plan, and we're going to increase the income tax threshold to £20,000, which will save about £1,500 a year for all the lowest paid. We intend to abolish stamp duty on share trading, which will allow us to compete with the city, abolish VAT on domestic fuel, abolish inheritance tax for estates under £2 million, because let's face it, a lot of estates already hit that, abolish business rates for small and medium firms. You can offset that with an online delivery tax. We have set out a long and complex system, and what we believe is that this will become financially, initially, that will be about a £48 billion across the UK injection, mainly to the private sector, which is a stimulus of about 2 to 2.2% of GDP. And we expect that the GDP growth we will get from that should make us revenue neutral by 2025-26. And by 2030, we should have tax revenues higher than our current position under our current tax regime. We should be generating more than £50 billion a year in extra taxes simply from the growth and the proceeds of that growth.
Can I just come in because I was reading about the tax threshold stuff that came out in the press the other day. Now, obviously, that is not a devolved issue.
It's not.
Yeah, so that's something that would have to. That's something that the Scottish Parliament has no control over.
Well, it is and it's not, because we are in a position where the taxes are different in Scotland than they are in England. You know, the SNP has not cut taxes. In fact, they have done the opposite. They have increased taxes at certain levels. So you've got to be careful. It seems to be a huge rush amongst Holyrood politicians to tax people more. But people are not in a position where they can pay more tax right now. What we need to do is we need to cut the burden, get the state off people's backs, and then the proceeds of growth will itself build up the tax base that you need. At the moment, we have businesses all across Scotland. I mean, I get taxis to work on my company account because I can't pay them myself. And every taxi driver I know, their income's fallen off a cliff. Every pub owner, every restaurant owner, every nightclub owner, everyone who works in hospitality, everyone who owns a hotel, their business income has fallen off a cliff. They can't take another hike in taxes. We have to reduce that tax burden, reduce the business rates to give them the chance to grow that business. And then as that business grows, the tax revenues will start to flow back to us. But right now, we can't afford to just tax people more because, we spent too much. It's not going to work. Okay,
because obviously you levelled some stuff at the SNP there. Stephanie, do you want to reply to any of that before you give your answer to the initial question?
I think, I'll focus on one point there. I noticed that Alan said about people are not in a position to pay more tax. And the reality is that over 50% of us in Scotland do not pay more tax. We've got the most progressive tax system in the UK here. And those that we're looking for to pay more tax are people who can afford to pay more tax. You're talking about the fact that there's lots of people struggling now. Yep, you're correct. But those people won't then be paying higher rates of tax. So it was just to kind of make that really clear.
Okay, and we'll come to you now for your answer on what is the SNP's plan to get Scotland out of recovery from the COVID pandemic?
Okay, so economy, it's an absolutely massive thing. And I think one of the things to really keep in mind is that economies are about supporting people and communities. They're not an end in and of themselves. If it was up to me, Trident, fantastic, get rid of Trident. Bearings Not Bombs, and invest that money in our communities and kids. I've actually got a banner up on my councillor page, and it's basically saying it's a wee picture of, I think it's Pudsey Beer or whatever it is. Have a telethon and raise money for Trident. Actually spend the money that we've got in communities and kids there. So, but clearly we'd need independence for that, and that's what independence is all about. It's the freedom to make the decisions, the freedom to do the things that I talked about in my introduction there as well. Manufacturing is absolutely huge for Scotland, and we've got to continue and support that. The Scottish Government have supported Tata. There's the 75 million to grow and innovate, the investment in National Manufacturing Institute there. There's but 26 million that's gone into the Low Carbon Infrastructure Challenge Fund, and that's about being able to develop robust supply lines. There's more millions that have gone into the Scottish Industrial Energy Transformation Fund as well, about decarbonising heavy industry. It's about promoting STEM at schools, engaging schools with industry. It's also about public ownership, so it's about keeping the NHS in public hands and free at the point of use. In the manifesto, there's the National Pharmaceutical Company that's going to start as well, which is going to make drugs cheaper for our NHS. Free NHS dental care as well. And I don't know about anybody else, but my teeth have taken a battering during this pandemic. I've managed to lose 2 crowns, but I won't get into that too much. The National Care Service as well is under development. There's Scottish Water, which if you're paying for your water down south, it's going to cost you an extra 42 quid. So obviously that's money that's in our pockets there as well. Public railways, when the railway contract's up next year, ScotRail into public hands as well. Businesses, we've got the lowest business rates poundage right across the UK. We've got the small business bonus as well there, which means 100,000 businesses don't pay any rates, and 6,370 of them are actually in North Lanarkshire. And there's also a plan to kind of gradually reduce the bonuses for the bigger businesses as well, to bring them right into line with what you've got in England there as well. So, I mean, there's lots of things that you'd like to do as well, but that we can't do just now, that we need the powers of independence to do as well, like creating a robust regulatory framework to stop the economy crashing again, like it did in 2008 during the financial crisis. Reinstating the kind of reverse burden of proof, that means that basically senior bankers, when something goes wrong in their watch, that it gets checked into to make sure that they've actually done the right thing, which the Tories actually removed there. So lots and lots of other things, protecting whistleblowers and stuff too there. But I think again, it's important, it's about it's about fairness, and that's what it comes down to for us all. And like I said, income tax in Scotland is the most progressive system that we've got in the UK. We've also got free university tuition, we'll keep that. There's free bus travel, which is now going to be extended to under 22s. And we have got the power to do it. We've tackled tax avoidance and evasion. We've actually done that, you know, in making sure that public procurement, etc., there, that the...
Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to... Thanks for that, Stephanie. We're going to move on, and we're going to move to John Mortimer from the Reform... no, not from Reform, Abolish Holyrood Party. John, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name every 5 seconds, but don't worry, because I'm going to repeat your name all the way through the night now to get it properly, so you'll have great name recognition by the end of the show. So, John, what is the Abolish Holyrood's plan for the Scottish economy?
Well, so I should probably just clarify as well, it's Abolish the Scottish Parliament Party. But yeah, our core policy of abolishing the Scottish Parliament saves 100 million every single year, and that allows us to have the best of both worlds. We can have more public spending and tax cuts, both of which are vital to the COVID recovery. For example, we could scrap the SNP tax hikes on middle earners, which hamper growth. However, I would also say it's not just a case of tinkering with tax rates and spending. Abolish is the only party that wants to fundamentally change how Scotland is run and how we invest in the economy. By scrapping Holyrood, we want to reinstate the Scottish Office so that funding, services and infrastructure can be delivered directly in Scotland by the UK Government, giving us the benefits of the Union, like higher public spending per head of population without the pantomime of party politics at Holyrood. If you compare the record of the Scottish Office to Holyrood, I mean, the Scottish Office rebuilt a vast post-war infrastructure, you know, all the social and economic elements, including 5 new towns, Scotland's motorways, and the remarkable Callaghan Dam, which was a marvel of engineering at the time. So we know that this system works, and it got so much more done than Holyrood. We also want to empower local government through the downward transfer of powers away from Holyrood and towards Scotland's regions and local authorities. Our candidates in the Highlands and Islands and North East regions have both pointed out that Holyrood is Edinburgh-centric, as a central belt bias. Some Scottish councils, for example, up in Aberdeen, have even had to threaten to bypass Holyrood and go straight to the UK government for local council funding. So more power to local government would also mean that services run more efficiently. Look at the debacle when the SNP took police and fire and rescue services away from local government and centralised them, creating Police Scotland, and you had the whole kind of debacle with having to pay 40 million every year in VAT, and the services were run less efficiently. Another thing we would do is also make sure that Scotland opens up as quickly as the rest of the UK. The Scottish Government has imposed lockdowns that have been both harsher in measure and slower to ease than the rest of the UK. And this has cost Scottish businesses millions of pounds in lost revenue. We believe there should be a one UK approach to COVID. We shouldn't have all these different devolved assemblies doing their own thing in their own time, because in the case of Scotland, where Sturgeon's dithered with opening up, it is hurting Scottish businesses. So our manifesto about the economy is very much about decentralising power. It's about getting rid of the bloated Holyrood bureaucracy. It's scrapping Holyrood tax hikes on middle earners that are crippling growth. It's about freeing Scotland from the SNP's referendum obsession that puts businesses off from investing. And it's about replacing Holyrood with the much better tried and tested system of the Scottish Office alongside strong local government.
Okay, so I'm just going to let Stephanie come back in and address a few of those points that you raised there. Just to let people watching know that we did agree before the hustings started that if someone mentions another party that's on the show, they will get a chance to respond to any points raised. So, Stephanie.
Martin, I don't have a response because I got cut off just after Paul started there, and I've just this second managed to come back in, so I'm a wee bit of an IT issue there, so I'm not sure what it was that you said. If you want to summarise the points, then I'm happy to try and answer them. I don't know, you might rather move on.
I think we'll just move on. You've won a watch there.
You got a free pass.
John, you've won a watch there, John. You got away with that one. So that goes unanswered. So, moving on to one of the things that's obviously been affected in the last year, and one of the problems of the last year has been the NHS. The NHS has been put to near breaking point. There is plans for increased spending at the moment being put on at the UK level and at the parliamentary level. Just want to hear your thoughts on what should be done for the NHS to improve the NHS, and what can we do to improve not having another pandemic like we've just went through. And we'll start with Stephanie this time.
Okay, just trying to move my wee box down so that I can see you. Oh, you're away anyway. So I suppose the COVID crisis has really brought home to all of us, I think, the importance of our physical and our mental and our emotional well-being. I think we've all watched in awe as the health and social care staff have responded to the crisis. It's been about bravery, energy and resilience, and astonishingly, even after all the heroics there, the NHS still remains at risk from Boris Johnson through privatisation and through Brexit as well there. So if you're looking to elect an SNP government, what you're going to be getting there is, you're looking at we've pledged to develop the NHS and put it at the heart of the policy, to make transformative plans there around it. We've looked at you've got the free dental care that we talked about on there, and the contributions to the NHS workforce as well. There's a bigger pay rise coming for NHS employees than the biggest kind of jump they've had for quite a long time there as well, about investing more money in the NHS as well there too, the NHS itself there. We're also talking about the fact that there have been there can be delays in people getting kind of routine operations and things like hip replacements and stuff like that, treatment delays there, and we're talking about the elective and my computer's going a bit funny here, the elective and the diagnostic treatment centres as well, bringing them in so that these kind of operations like your hip replacements and stuff like that aren't going to be delayed because of emergencies and stuff. You're also looking at every NHS board area having a cancer centre, a cancer diagnostic centre there, and there's more investment, more money going into community health services, and there's going to be a big focus in that as far as young people are concerned as well, because the last thing we want is for anyone to be getting left behind, any of our young people suffering from the impact of this pandemic very many years down the line there. I think as well the COVID pandemic's also kind of brought home the need for social care as well. So having a national care service, that's under development too just now there. And also looking at introducing a national wage for carers as well, making sure that social care is valued equally with healthcare as well. So I think the NHS plan is really bold, it's really comprehensive, and I think it's quite life-changing for people, to be honest with you there. But we've all borne our own family crises over this past period. We've all had a lot of sadness in this past year, and I'm 100% committed to fighting and making sure that we learn the lessons of the past and that we actually translate that into long-term changes that are going to work for people and that are going to support communities.
I'll ask the question before we move on, just because I know it will come up. So the government has admitted to mistakes during lockdown. There were mistakes made. Is your party committed to learning from those mistakes and investigating what went wrong and where they went wrong during the pandemic? Because no one's going to come out of this pandemic unscathed, I would say.
So I'm guessing you're talking about care homes, Martin?
Yeah, well, there's opinions on other things as well. There's opinions on locking borders and things like that. But yeah, just in general.
Sorry, what was the second thing you said there? On what? On
shutting borders and things. There's a lot of things that people would say that should have been done differently. Right. In hindsight.
Right. Well, I think you've said the word hindsight is a really wonderful thing, and when you're thinking about care homes and stuff, you can't look back on that now, knowing all we know at this moment in time, and thinking, yeah, we should have done A, B, or C. People were working at that time with information they had at that point in time. Testing wasn't widespread, it wasn't as accurate, and the biggest thing I think as well is that we didn't realise that a lot of people were asymptomatic. That wasn't a thing, we didn't recognise that. So absolutely, and you're talking about closing borders and stuff as well. Closing the borders, that's an incredibly difficult one. I think the one thing that Nicola Sturgeon did really, really well was, as far as possible, she did take the politics out of it, and the reason for that, I think, is about it was so important for all of us to be working together and looking after each other, and we did. We all stepped up, people looking after their neighbours, communities going out, delivering food, loads and loads of different stuff there. And I think, you know, if you've been talking about closing borders down early on, people start thinking that's political, and people start, you know, getting into entrenched positions and not looking to help each other. And that's really, really mattered.
I think what you've missed my point is there, that it's not about saying, yeah, it's not about blaming people, but when big organisations go through something, they will review it and see where they went wrong, with the benefit of hindsight, to make sure that, you know, if in 2 years' time there's another pandemic, you won't make the same mistakes twice. That's what I'm trying to say. Is there a commitment?
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. What I'm saying is, yeah, you're looking back in retrospect, and it's very, very easy to judge things at that point in time. But absolutely, you have to look at, you know, what things could we have done differently? What should we have really have known at that point in time? How should we have approached it? What was it that we missed there as well? And that's how you should be looking at it and thinking, what lessons is it that we can learn? Because the most important thing, like you say, is the next time a pandemic comes around, we need to have learned those lessons and know how to cope with it. And especially when we're in a situation right now where we could be looking, you know, at different forms of the virus coming through, different mutations coming through from different countries. But on a positive note for that, we're in a position where vaccines as well, you know, the people that do these things are incredible. We've got the main vaccine, and that can be quite easily tweaked, generally speaking, you know, to help ward off those kind of things. So hopefully we're going to be looking at another 100 years down the line before we face a brand new pandemic of any type, but definitely learn the lessons.
Okay. And we'll go to John, just to see give you, John and Alan, a little bit extra time on these answers, but just to come back at us with a little bit on the NHS, where you think we can improve it, where we can move forward, and a little bit on what we should do to protect ourselves from another pandemic.
Well, we would fund 1,000 extra nurses for Scotland using the savings made from scrapping Holyrood. We believe it's far better to fund nurses in healthcare rather than, you know, Sturgeon and our cronies with these lavish six-figure salaries they get at Holyrood. Just to give some information on that 1,000 figure with the nurses, a response by the Treasury to a 2015 Freedom of Information request revealed that the pay rate for a nurse is £42,000 and it's £45,500 for a teacher. The pay rate is the full cost of employing them as opposed to just the salary. So that's why we can commit to funding 1,000 extra nurses and also 1,000 extra teachers for Scotland through the 100 million plus saved every single year by scrapping Holyrood, in addition to reversing other cuts to public services and ditching SNP tax hikes on middle earners. Now, the SNP pushed this narrative that we have to protect the NHS from Westminster, yet it was the pre-devolution UK government that created the NHS. It was only able to roll out the NHS across the UK within the space of a few years because we had one UK government and a system of administrative devolution based around the Scottish office, as opposed to legislative devolution based around the legislature at Holyrood. Now, in 2018, we celebrated the 70th birthday of the NHS. It's now 73 years old, and for 5 full decades out of those 73 years, it functioned very well with no devolved assemblies. In fact, it functioned far better than it does now. People remember the NHS as it was. You know, we had matrons, state-enrolled nurses, no PPI, no privatisation. It didn't have the same culture of pen pushing and bureaucracy that it does now, both in Scotland and in other parts of the UK. Now, the SNP might try to blame those things on Westminster, but the fact is that NHS in Scotland has devolved, and the SNP have largely imitated UK government legislation on the NHS, consistent with the sort of bland, managerial, Blairite style of politics we see at Holyrood. Even the National reported that since 2012, 250,000 Scots have waited over the 12-week legally binding limit for treatment that the SNP government itself passed. The waiting time reports notes, and the waiting times report notes, and I'll quote it here. Since the introduction of the 90% RTT standard, NHS Scotland performance has decreased from 92.4% in June 2012 to 76.9% in September 2019. That's under the SNP's watch. That's with health being a devolved matter to Holyrood. So our core policies on the NHS can be summed up as using the 100 million saved by scrapping Holyrood and taking a portion of that to fund 1,000 extra nurses for Scotland, putting an end to the SNP's mismanagement of the Scottish NHS and allowing the NHS to function and be administered as a truly national health service to the British people.
Okay. Thanks, John. We'll now go. Don't worry, Stephanie. You'll get a chance to respond to some of those points, but we'll go on to Alan first.
Seriously, John. Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
That was.
Oh, you were talking to John, right? I thought you just.
That's really that's exactly the sort of problem we have. We have a bureaucracy, and it's not just in Scotland, but we're talking about Scottish elections, so it is. We'll talk about the Scottish health bureaucracy. And it's far too cumbersome, and it's far too immobile. It won't react when we need to react, and when it does react, it reacts far too far the other way. If you take drug deaths in Scotland, the SNP were told, don't cut the drugs budget. They cut the drugs budget by 50%. There are thousands of people dead. There's more than 3,000 people dead because of that. Sorry, guys, that's not a mistake. That's absolute stupidity. You listen to the experts and you do what they request within your budget, but you can't just chuck vanity projects at it. I'm here from Edinburgh, and in Edinburgh we have Edinburgh Sick Kids up the road. It's 5 years old and it's never been opened. It's opening this week, I believe, just in time for the election, funnily enough. And it'll probably close again just as fast. You've got hospitals in Glasgow, you've got hospitals right across the country not fit for purpose because they've been built on the cheap on PFI, or rather expensively on PFI, by the Labour Party, by the Tory Party, by the SNP. They've all been responsible for this. And it's not been done right. It's not. We have a limited pot of money. The object of the game is to make sure you get the best health service for the money you spend. And quite frankly, we don't, because incredible amounts are spent wasted on bad project management, cost overruns, time overruns, not being built for purpose. You have contaminated water supplies at hospitals. You've got air conditioning systems that carry infection. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Now, if you're designing a hospital, you don't design an air conditioning system that's going to drag disease all the way around the hospital, for God's sake. It's not really difficult to grasp. But somebody just went ahead and belted that through, because the bureaucracy cares more about actually just building the thing than actually that it is fit to work in and fit for purpose. And we're in a position where we have quangos all over the place that don't do the job. I'll pick the biggest one, and it's not a Scottish one, it's an English one, NHS England. It's that organisation gets £4.5 billion a year, and its primary job is to protect the UK against a pandemic. Well, yeah, well done, NHS England. They spent so much time bitching about the sugar tax and obesity tax and not actually sorting out their primary job, their day job. And it's the same in the NHS in Scotland. They're not doing the day job. The day job is to make sure you heal the sick and protect against disease. And we're not doing that. We spend far too much time trying to get appointments. I had an eye operation. I'm blind in my left eye. I had an eye operation. It took 3 years between my first appointment and the actual operation, because it took me 6 months to get a follow-up appointment every single time. And by the time they diagnosed it, it's a detached retina. When they did do the operation, there's a floater in my left eye and I can't see out of it. But that's the problem. If you're taking 6 months between appointments, how do you get anybody cured or healed? You've got to be more reactive, and we're simply not.
Now, okay, Stephanie, we're going to give you a couple of minutes to come back to some of those points if you can.
My goodness, there's quite a lot of points covered there, aren't there? Can I just check, first of all, Martin, I'm not sure if I've got a name wrong. Is it Paul or is it John?
It's John Mortimer. John Mortimer. It's me that got John's name wrong at the start. That's
right, okay. John, I'm sorry, I've been calling you Paul as well because of that. My apologies. I I think something to point out is that NHS Scotland has always been entirely separate from NHS England. That's been the way it's always been from the outset. And what I would say is that Scotland per head has more GPs and more nurses than anywhere else in the UK. It's got the best performing accident and emergency service. So this idea that in Scotland the NHS is terrible is a complete lot of nonsense. When you have these conversations,
no one's saying it's terrible. No one's saying it's terrible. What we're saying is it could be better.
Yes, of course, they could always be better. Being better is probably going to take more money, I would say. So yes, our NHS isn't perfect just now. We are looking at investing additional money. It's in the SNP Manifesto. It's down there in black and white in front of you. We've got bursaries for our nurses and midwives, which were taken away down south too. So there are a lot of really good things about the Scottish NHS, and when you're making a comparison, which I think is a reasonable comparison to make to elsewhere in the UK, it is doing much, much better.
I think that's something that I think that has infected Scottish politics quite a bit, though, is that we compare ourselves to other parts of the country.
Yep.
Well, I think we're part of the UK, Martin, then, that's
yeah.
Then it's always going to happen. The reality of independence has been able to, right now, yes, we can make some choices, but we have two hands tied behind our back and one leg tied up, and we're hopping around rather than actually having the powers that we need to make overarching decisions that can really change the way that we live in Scotland.
It's just because I know there's a point there where you get when you compare, if you compare Nicola Sturgeon to Boris Johnson. Nicola Sturgeon looks like the most amazing politician that's ever lived. I don't think I'm offending anyone in this room by saying that about Boris Johnson. In terms of some of his public comments and some of his attitudes in public have been atrocious. So everyone's going to look. I mean, I look like a statesman next to Boris Johnson, and that's terrifying. But that's the thing. We sometimes get trapped in comparing ourselves with the rest of the UK instead of looking and seeing what Scotland is doing and saying, right, where can Scotland improve and what can Scotland do?
There's the example I gave. Scotland has the highest per capita drugs deaths in Europe. That's run by NHS Scotland. That's not an improvement on England or anywhere else. I mean, not just against England, but against Europe. So
what I would say to that, Alan, is
okay.
We're in a situation, Alan, where drugs is a criminal issue, and we've been asking in Scotland for a long time, devolve drugs to us. It's actually a public health issue. So what we need to be doing is, the drugs issue is horrific, and a hell of a lot that's at the root of it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's not been mistakes and that funding shouldn't have been cut. I completely agree with you there. But what you've got, drugs is a social problem and it's a public health problem. It comes from poverty. It comes from people being left with no hope in their lives. And it's not just the individuals that it affects. It affects, the ripples go out right through our community. I've lost close family members to drugs. It's something that's very close to my heart. And I think it's affected most of us there. But it needs to be treated as a public health issue rather than it being a criminal issue. And I would like Scotland, we've been begging for the powers to be able to do that. Safe consumption rooms, all the rest of it. We're going to push that as far as we can. Right now, Angela Constance has got a bunch of experts together who are looking at how it works in all different places across the world, and they're looking at pulling that information together to be able to set out what options that we do have. But those options are going to be limited because we're part of the UK.
You've been empowered for 14 years. You can't turn around and say...
We've been in the UK for 14 years.
And you can't blame the UK government for everything. This is the SNP's raison d'etre. This is what you do. You blame Westminster. You always say, it's Westminster's fault if we were only free. Hey, if you secede from the UK, you won't have the money. Right now, you have...
Right, I'm gonna start cutting mics off in a second. Let's all calm down.
I'm wondering if I could ask my little question there. Would you not agree that actually drugs should be a public health issue and not a criminal issue?
Which should I do? Should we decriminalise drugs? Is that the question? because it
No,
works
I'm
both
saying, do you
ways.
believe it's a public health issue, or do you believe it should be a criminal issue?
It's both. By definition, it's
Okay.
both. I mean, if
Thanks.
you're pushing heroin, if you're a pusher, you're a criminal. The addict may not be, but the pusher is. So it's a public health issue from the addict's point of view. It's a criminal issue from the point of view of dealing with the pushers and dealing with the suppliers. So you can't just say it's one or the other. It's both. It has to be both.
It's not in other countries
Right. Now, yeah.
with much more.
Right. This has brought us on to another subject because Alan mentioned it there. I thought it's a good time to segue into that. I'll take a deep breath and you can all get your individual 3 minutes on there. This is a great thing about it being remote. You can't. Oh, Stephanie has disappeared there. I'm sure she'll come back on, no doubt.
Back?
Yeah, you're
Oh,
back.
that's me, I think. Is it?
Right. The great thing about being remote is you can't actually physically go for each other. Now,
We're all too well mannered to do that.
yeah.
I've never been this late in my life. I would lose.
Now it's 6th of May. There's Hollywood elections, and one of the big subjects that always dominates Scottish politics since 2014 is Scottish independence. Now, it's not necessarily on. I think we can work out from what you've been saying so far that John with Abolish Scottish Parliament would be pro-union. Alan with the Reform UK, with some of your statements you've made, you would be pro-union. And Stephanie, I would hope to assume that you're pro-independence. It'd be a big shock if you got round and you weren't. So we know where you are on that subject, and we're not going to talk about whether it's relevant to be Scotland be independent or Scotland not to be independent, because that has been done to death for the last 7 years. I think if someone hasn't formed an opinion on whether Scotland should be independent or not, they obviously haven't been paying attention for the last 7 years. So what I would put to you is it's the referendum question. Should there be another referendum? If not, what is the democratic alternative if a pro-independence majority is delivered in Parliament? Because that obviously is looking by the polls to be something that's going to happen in the Scottish Parliament. And we'll go to John Mortimer of the Abolish Scottish Parliament Party first.
We are totally opposed to another referendum on breaking up the United Kingdom. And I think there's an extremely important point to be made here. A Holyrood election cannot deliver a mandate on constitutional matters like the Union. The Scotland Act 1998, Schedule 5, Part 1 states plain as day that the Union is a reserved matter. It is not a devolved matter. And as a unionist, I find it deeply worrying that other unionist parties are making this election about a second referendum purely for their own electoral gain. You have Labour saying that they want a third option on the ballot paper for Devo Max. You have the Scottish Conservatives saying that we need to prevent an SNP majority in order to prevent a second referendum. The Scottish Conservatives know full well that the UK government, and they are the party of the UK government, is the only body that can actually pass legislation granting another referendum. So there is no. As Stephen Daisley, the journalist, pointed out recently, even if the SNP were to win all 129 seats at Holyrood, that would not give them a mandate on constitutional matters. It would give them a mandate on devolved matters like the health and education, but not on constitutional matters, and it would not give them a mandate for a referendum on breaking up the country. In terms of the avenue to get a referendum on breaking up the country, or how we would want to pursue that mandate, that is something that has to come through a general election. I spoke with you quite extensively on that point when I had the one-on-one interview before, and the position, the unionist position, which was initially obviously in relation to the situation with Ireland, was always that they have to have a mandate as abstentionists if they want to get a mandate to withdraw from the United Kingdom. Britain's democracy is parliamentary. The mandate for the Union comes through the principles of participation or abstention. When a Scottish constituency elects an MP to represent it within the British Parliament, to sit in the British Parliament and take British taxpayers' money and legislate as part of the British nation. They are delivering a mandate for the Union. So if the SNP wish to remove 59 Scottish constituencies from the Union, then they must win each of those 59 Scottish Westminster constituencies on a abstentionist basis with the majority of the vote in each constituency if they want to claim a legitimate mandate for removing, as I said, all 59 constituencies from the Union.
Okay, I mean, I'll come back to some of that stuff after we've gone round the group. Just because we'll go pro-union, pro-independence, pro-union for this one. So, Stephanie, if I could get you to come in for your comments on the independence referendum and if we should have one and how we do it and all that stuff. Hold on, Stephanie. There's a little bit of a problem with your microphone. There we go.
Okay. At the end of the day, the Scottish people are sovereign. That's been agreed right across the board. It's a dictatorship when someone decides, or when one side decide that the other can't leave a union, as far as that's concerned there. It's down to Scottish voters to take a democratic choice. That's what's going to be reflected in this election. Absolutely, I believe Scotland's people should have the choice in a referendum. So if we return a majority of majority independence Scottish government, which includes the Greens, whoever else is well there, then absolutely it is our right, and it's international law, it's human rights that we have the right to choose to become an independent nation should we wish to do so.
Okay, and Alan, get your statement on it.
Why would you want to? I mean, we've had the vote once in a generation, 2014. The answer was no. Well, what is it about no that the SNP don't understand? Or maybe it's once in a generation, they don't understand that. A generation is not 7 years, not in human terms anyway. Dogs maybe, but not humans. When it comes to the UK, you say Scottish voters, okay, what about all the Scots living in England? Do they get a vote? And if not, why not? They're as entitled to talk on the future of Scotland as anyone who lives here. Are English voters going to vote who live in Scotland going to get a vote? Of course they are. So why shouldn't Scottish voters who live in England get a vote? Your whole ethos, your whole point is completely wrong, because it's based on the idea that every time you get a majority of one seat, you can scream for another referendum. And then as soon as you get a referendum and you win by 50% plus one vote, you're going to drag Scotland screaming out of the UK. Accept democracy, accept the people said no, get over it, and do your day job. And quite frankly, doing your day job is not something that has been particularly well done over the last 7 years. The obsession with independence has meant that our education system is failing, our economy is not doing so well, the National Health Service in Scotland, you say it's doing well. Well, there's a lot of dead bodies, probably disagree with you. The whole point is you're obsessed with this independence. If you want to secede from the Union, well, take the bits of Scotland that voted to secede. Take a tiny wee bit of Dundee and a tiny wee bit of Glasgow. Everyone else said we're staying. So, that'll take.
I should maybe point out North Lanarkshire voted to leave as well.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. But I mean, this is the point. This is democracy. The people of North Lanarkshire accepted the result of the referendum. The people of Shetland voted to stay. There are people in Shetland who want to secede from Scotland. Are we going to say yes, that's okay? Let's put this to bed forever. We had the vote. You agitated for a vote. You got your vote. You lost your vote. Get over it. That's all there is to it. Get over it.
Okay, so we're coming on a few points on that. Basically, I always like to pick this up. I've picked it up anytime anyone's mentioned it. The once in a generation comment was made by Alex Salmond during an interview, and the full statement is, it's once in a generation, and that's my opinion, because I would never want to hold another leader to it. So it's not anything that's in written documents. It's not anything that anyone actually said, this is it, we have to have once in a generation. So there's no argument for that. And we just like to pull that up because that's something that
the rhetoric was there throughout that campaign. Once in a generation, once in a lifetime. This is our big chance to get this done.
But the second point would be the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement suggests that a generation is 7 years.
I don't think it does. Yeah. 7 years? I mean, a generation is generally considered to be 20 to 25 years in the UK. Yeah? I'd certainly say 7 years.
But what we're talking about here is right. So we know
on the 700th anniversary of Bannockburn, which is about as cool a perfect a date as you can get if you want to leave the UK. We had the vote. The vote was no. It's over. The important thing to do in Holland, the SNP want to get independence. They want to secede from the Union. There's an easy way to do it. Govern Scotland well. Govern Scotland well. Make it so that everybody who's wavering thinks it's a great idea because we've got a great government. But you've had 7 years since that. I haven't seen Scotland governed well.
No, so what we're going to come back to, though, we're going to come back to a few points on that. But so, John, your point, we want to pick up on that, because obviously you think the referendums are, because we talked about this at length when you were on the show, that referendums are not legal. They shouldn't be actually used. The decision should be made by representatives in Parliament. And as you said, that it's not a devolved issue. I think it's a little bit extreme to say that a pro-independence party would have to get 59 out of 59 seats to ensure that they got independence by sitting at Parliament. Oh, sorry, John, I'll just bring you back on. Sorry.
It's a very important democratic principle because Britain is a parliamentary democracy based on the idea of constituency representation. What you do when you have a referendum, you could have a situation where, let's say, for example, one part of Scotland votes to leave the UK, but in other parts of Scotland, including whole constituencies, vote to stay within the UK. Now, it would be very unjust in a parliamentary democracy based on constituency representation to have constituents who have elected an MP to represent them within the British Parliament, pro-union MP perhaps, and then tell those constituents, actually, you are being hauled out of the union against your will because of essentially a glorified opinion poll held at some kind of subnational level. So that is anti-democratic, it's anti-parliamentary. This whole fiction that the union can be dissolved on the back of a simple majority referendum is a product of this cosy little Holyrood club. They all voted for the initial referendum. When that first referendum on proposing the dissolution of the United Kingdom was launched by Cameron's Conservative government, the SNP held, I believe, 6 out of 59 Scottish Westminster seats. There was no mandate for it there whatsoever. And there will not, just to bring it back to this election, no mandate can come for a second referendum through this election for the simple reason that the union is not a devolved matter. Democracy means nothing if we do not address issues through the appropriate channels, through the agreed democratic mechanisms. It's there in law. The Scotland Act 1998, Schedule 5, Part 1 states plain as day that the union is a reserved matter. It has nothing to do with a devolved election. The SNP can win loads of seats and they get a very firm mandate on devolved issues like health and education, but it gives them no mandate whatsoever on the union or to call a referendum on the union. And I'm appalled that other unionist parties are not taking this position. As I said, they are whipping up people into this idea that, if the SNP get a majority, it legitimises a second referendum. It doesn't. And any party that says that is taking an anti-union position, including, unfortunately, Labour and the Conservative Party, who are both whipping up this narrative that we have to prevent an SNP majority to prevent IndyRef 2 purely to increase their own kind of electoral gain. We've got this situation now where the Scottish Tories and the SNP feed off each other. with this false framework, constitutional politics. Both are anti-union parties, and both are pushing the fiction that a devolved election can result in a referendum. It can't.
Now, come back to say though, so the SNP had a majority of MPs in 2015, and I'm trying to remember when the elections were. 2015, 2017, and 2019. They've got a majority of MPs there. So, is there a mandate? Is there a mandate there for in Westminster then, for them to?
Every single one of those SNP MPs were elected on manifestos to represent those constituencies within the British Parliament, to take their salaries as MPs with British taxpayers' money, and to pass legislation in common with the rest of the British nation as part of the whole. As I said, if they want to claim a mandate, if they want a democratic mandate for separation in Britain's unitary parliamentary constitution, there are agreed channels through which to do that. And if they wish to remove 59 Scottish constituencies from the Union, they must win each of those 59 constituencies with a majority of the vote in each constituency and on an abstentionist basis. No British constituency should be removed from the Union, removed from the British nation against its will. And that is a completely fair democratic principle.
Stephanie, do you want to come in on that at all? Just hold on.
It's like, yet again, sorry?
Yep. Do you want to come in on that subject?
Yep. I think what we're finding tonight, Martin, is what we find quite a lot, that we've got some unionists that speak at least twice as much as the Scottish National Party do on.
To be fair, the question was about independence, so that's where we're going for.
I think we're in a bit of a position here where, you know, John's views are so extreme that unionists are not unionist enough for him. That's quite a scary prospect. It's a scary prospect as well that people think that, you know, a generation is so short. When you're talking about the Good Friday Agreement, you've got a 7-year period that you're talking about there. People are talking about democracy, you know, it's set in 2014. I'm sorry, can I have an opportunity to speak?
We'll just let them finish. Yeah.
Thanks. I've been interrupted a couple of times. So, sorry, what was I saying there?
Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah, the Good Friday Agreement, 7 years. Now, this idea that we have to, you know, that democracy, but we've laid it down in 2014 and nothing can change from then, we can't move forward from then. Why is it that we have elections regularly? It's because people change their mind. People change their mind and they have a democratic right to vote and change their mind. That's what we do at elections. That's what we've always done at elections. So this idea that, you know, it's set in stone because there was a vote in 2014 and so much has changed since then. We've had Brexit, which we're only just at the very, very beginning of. Brexit is going to be horrific. It's going to keep getting worse and worse. We've had COVID going on as well. There's been big changes. And if the Scottish people vote for a mandate that says Scotland's future should be Scotland's choice, then absolutely they have every right to demand that.
Okay, Alan, I know you're itching to come in on that.
Well, yeah, I can see John's position. Constitutionally, he's absolutely correct. And he's talking about on an abstentionist basis. So I'm presuming, John, that what you'd say is the SNP would have to not only win the constituencies, they'd have to say, we will not serve in the Westminster Parliament. Is that correct?
That's correct, because it's absolute nonsense to stand in a manifesto to represent a constituency within the British Parliament, to pass legislation within it, to participate within it and take a salary from it, and then to claim that that's somehow a mandate for breaking up Britain. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. As to is 2014 too recent? Well, people change their minds all the time. I'm sure they do. But we had a campaign. More people voted. Incidentally, more people voted for Brexit in Scotland, voted for the SNP at the last election. So let's not just say that's going to be a disaster. But the idea that we can just, every time the SNP get a majority, we'll have another referendum. you're into it, what, as somebody put it, the never ending. How many times do you want to go? How many times are you going to go? This has to be put to bed. It has to be put to bed. Now, if you go for another referendum, what are you going to do when you lose it? Is that going to put it to bed, or are you going to want it again in another 5 years or another 7 years? That's our problem. You won't accept the result.
Alan, it's not about it's not about the SNP or me. It's about the people of Scotland. It's the people of Scotland that are sovereign. It's about what they believe, and it's about what they take the decision to vote for. That's where the power lies, and that's where the power should lie. And that's what you said earlier on when you were speaking, actually.
Now, so my cousins are all Scots. They all live in England. Do they get a vote on your referendum? Because I pretty much guarantee you that the million or so Scots living in England are going to vote no.
I'll answer you. I've also got family that live in England. I lived down in Wiltshire for a few years, and I lived down in Bournemouth for a few years as well. What I would say is that it's up to the people who live and work in this country, who have their home in their country, to decide how this country moves forward. So I would say it's the people who live and work in Scotland. So I think the way it's set up just now is actually quite correct. I wouldn't move to England and think that I should be able to vote in the next referendum. I think it's perfectly fair to say that.
Okay, I'm just going to come in here and bring up, because obviously John brings up some interesting ideas on, and because obviously it's not that you're opposed to referendum on the basis of we've had one or things like that. It's more an ideologically opposition that no, there shouldn't be referendums and it should be done at this this level at Westminster. Now, Boris Johnson has said that he'll be dead in the ditch before he allows another referendum. The Scottish Parliament has no power to call a referendum. Martin Keating's is currently in a court case on that matter, but obviously the Scottish Government at the moment are going with we need a Section 30. So what I'm saying is, beyond John's comments there about the 59 and things like that, what would be your alternative route if the people of Scotland, which they have as a right to be democratically secede from the Union, how would they go about that if that mandate of a referendum is taken away? And that's come to you, Alan, on that.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. You take away the mandate for the referendum. What do you mean? So you
not a mandate for a referendum. Like if a party stands on the manifesto of we want independent Scotland.
We just lost Stephanie, by the way.
She's seceded. If a party stands on the mandate we want independent Scotland, how do they go about that democratically? If referendum is off the table, if you can't have a referendum.
Well, my comment on that is that it's off the table now because we had a result fairly recently. Now, if you want to have another referendum in 20 years' time, that's fine. I have no objection to that. I think you'll lose it, but I said to you, Stephanie, if you want to get Scotland out of the Union, if you really want to secede, all you have to do is practice good governance for the next 10 years. The fact that you won't, because you're just not good enough, the fact that the Scottish National Party are not good enough to govern this country, that speaks for itself. As for the economics, well, I'm not going to even go into the economic argument. There's a £16 billion.
Well, it's not about economics.
Economics change. The oil price will change. All sorts. Anything could happen. We could have any sort of economic thing happen. We could have another banking crisis. We don't know the future of what the economic future is. So I'm not going to go into the economics. The bottom line for me is very simple. You asked Scotland's opinion, Scotland said no. Since then, you have done nothing but argue for another referendum. You've not run the country. Scottish education is a disaster zone. Scotland has dropped under the SNP from 10th and 11th in the PISA rankings to 28th, 29th and 29th. That's more than one position a year, for God's sake. Do your day job and stop obsessing over referenda. Stop obsessing over independence. Just do your day job. And
Okay,
I'd be
yeah, Alan, all I would say is that's kind of not the question I was asking. I was just asking about. So you were saying that you're not objecting to a referendum. It's a timescale. It's a timescale thing. You think that it's all right to have a
20 years.
no, but
20 years.
What I'm saying is you believe that the referendum is the democratic way to decide this question of independence, but not.
Ultimately, it has to be, but not now. It have to be at least I'd say at least another decade.
Okay, and Stephanie. There's very little chance of the Scottish Parliament being granted a referendum, regardless of how many seats they get. What is Plan B?
I think at the end of the day, Martin, we're in a situation where the President has been set. We had a referendum in 2014 because the SNP got a majority government. So should that be the case at this election? I don't think there is going to be any option left. Boris can say no as much as he wants, but from an international point of view as well, looking at it from a human rights point of view, people have the right to choose, and that is the bottom line. The choice is going to be ours. We've walked up, we've knocked on every door and said, right, okay, let's try this one, and it's been shut in our face. This is going to be the final door. And if Boris closes again in our face too, it's like, what democratic means do we have of actually getting this? And we're then going to be in a position where it's going to probably end up in courts. We're going to be holding a referendum anyway, and it's going to be down to Boris et al. to come ahead and challenge that.
Okay, so we're going to go on to audience questions now. So there is questions that have been submitted and questions that have been coming up during the show. So we'll try and get these ones back down to being quite quick and sharp as much as possible. And the first question is, we're not going to be presumptuous, but if you are elected to the Scottish Parliament and given the opportunity, what would be the first bill that you would bring forward in the Scottish Parliament? And we'll go to Alan to start off this one.
That's fair enough. I think it was my question in the first place. Yeah, it's quite easy for me because the bill was written. The bill was written in 1215. It's been revised, but it still applies in England. It's not part of Scots law. And for me, it's Clause 29 of Magna Carta, which should be instituted into Scots law as a matter of urgency. And it says, I'll quote the whole thing, it's not very long. It says, no freeman shall be taken or imprisoned, or be deceased of his freehold, or liberties, or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled, or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we not pass condemn upon him, but by lawful judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land. We will sell to no man, we shall not deny or defer to any man either justice or right. To me, that needs to be included in Scots law. It's a guarantee against state power. It's a guarantee that you can't just have your goods seized or your liberties taken. They have to find a crime to convict you of, and it gives you a guarantee of a jury trial. That, to me, is possibly the foundation of all our liberties today, and that needs to be included into Scots law as a matter of urgency, I think.
Okay, and Stephanie?
I think if I was going to be idealistic about it and say, what would my choice be? Obviously, in real terms, it'll be whatever comes through the Parliament and committees first. But if I was to have a choice and be able to decide exactly what I would like, I think everyone should have the right to food, clothing and shelter. It's that simple. All of our basic needs should be met. That is the job of government, is to meet those needs, and well-being and happiness need to be at the centre of decisions and at the centre of what comes forward. Simple.
And John?
Well, obviously I want to scrap the place, but just in a scenario perhaps where we've got a small number of Abolish MSPs representing the anti-devolution position, the private members bill I would introduce, I would say, is a Bill of Rights, guaranteeing right to free speech. Because you look at Holyrood and some of the legislation that's brought in things like named person the Offensive Behaviour Football Act, the Holmes's Hate Crime Bill. I said I would bring in a Bill of Rights that guarantees a right to free speech, a right to private family life, and things like that, because Hollywood just seems to have no respect whatsoever for these things.
Okay, and the next question I'm going to ask is more of a localised question. It's come in, and it's come in during the show. And what, if you were elected, what could you do to protect the Greenbelt areas in North Lanarkshire, protect them from overdevelopment? And we'll go to Stephanie first.
To protect the Greenbelt areas in North Lanarkshire, well, the way that actually happens is it's part of the council's local development plans, where we have the areas that are designated as Greenbelt, as brownfield sites, as areas for building, etc. there as well. And I think the second local development plan for North Lanarkshire is probably submitted kind of quite recently, if you like. So you'll be following along those lines. It's kind of like the decision for that has already been made. And that's kind of set out, and it has been set out by the councils. Okay,
and John?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, as been pointed out, that's obviously something to do very much with the kind of council level. What I would say, though, is that perhaps councils could be more empowered to make decisions in their own interest with these regards, and some things perhaps to better protect, greenfield areas and reject new developments, as if they were actually better funded by Holyrood. And obviously our policy in that regard by scrapping Holyrood would mean that they get funding directly from the UK government. We already have some councils, as said, Aberdeen up north, threatening to bypass Holyrood and get that funding. So if we have better funded local councils, they'll be in a better position to utilise their existing powers to reject new developments.
And Alan?
Yeah, that's quite. It's obviously a local council matter. What can an MSP do about it? For an MSP, no, go on.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, the Scottish government, the Scottish Parliament has the power to overturn decisions at some points, and they have done in the past.
Yeah, that is both a good and a bad thing, because if the Scottish Parliament has the right to overturn decisions, then it can overturn them against local interests. Now, that's fine if you're supposed to be looking at national interest, but a lot of that comes down to, are they lobbied? And lobbying is a significant issue here. Developers tend to build up banks of land, and they want to develop that land to make them money, and they sit on the land for a while, and then they build it, and they keep lobbying. And no matter how much local protesters object, the developer always has the money. They always have they'll come back with a slightly different development and another slightly different development. And that's a very difficult problem to solve. I think you might have to put a moratorium so that once a planning decision has been made, then let's say 5 or 10 years they can't put another planning development in. That strikes me as being the most sensible option, because otherwise your local people stand up and say, we don't want this, and the developer comes back and says, okay, we'll have this instead. And it's not really that different, but the local people have to get together, get their campaigns together, and fight the developer all over again. And that's not reasonable, and that's not fair. So I'd say put a moratorium. Once a decision has been made, then you have to put a moratorium. You can't ask for a new development for, say, 5 years, 10 years. I'm not quite sure of the period here, but 5 to 10 years would sound about right, because then you've got a new councillors and a new Scottish Parliament who will then be able to make a different decision.
Okay, and there's one.
Martin,
yeah.
See, just a wee point on that. Surprisingly enough, I'm going to agree with Alan to a degree there, as far as landowners go. And one thing I would say is that the Scottish Government, or one thing that's in the manifesto as well, that we're looking at bringing forward is some kind of land reform, and we're also looking at the fact that everybody would need to be on a register. So owners, renters of land or whatever would need to actually be registered there as well. So it means that you're not getting that ducking and diving and getting out of it. And there's also investment in stuff like peatlands and biodiversity and stuff like that, which comes through the Scottish Government kind of down to the councils, if you like, there. So you were talking about planning and things there, Alan. So very much part of that is consultations. I sit in the planning committee myself. So what happens is there are consultations with SEPA and different statutory bodies that you have to actually speak to there as well, to make sure you know that certain things aren't being damaged, that certain different species have been looked after and protected. There's SSSI sites and things like that as well. So for example, the mausoleum down at Hamilton just now, right the way through to Châtellerault, looking at protecting that whole large area and stuff as well there, because it's got lots of really quite rare, not just plants and fauna. I can never say that. I can never work out how to say that right. Insects and creatures, insects, creatures, and all the rest of it as well there. So there is a lot of stuff going on about that, and a lot of that stuff does come from the Scottish Government as well and get built into what councils are doing.
Right, so we're going to come to the last question. Now, this might feel like a left field question. Before I ask it, can I just ask that you don't mention former presenters? So the BBC is a massive corporation. Is it fit for purpose anymore, or is it something that this is not something the Scottish Parliament can do, but again, just looking at a more UK level, this is one that came in from an audience member as well. Is it something that needs to be reformed, the BBC, in terms of how much it spends on certain areas of programming and things like that, and should we look at it because it is a state broadcaster? And we'll come to John first.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do support the principle of there being a national state broadcaster. I mean, with regards to the BBC, I think a lot of the issues with the expenses there are due to these ludicrous salaries that some presenters are paid. What I would do is I would go back to the way it kind of used to be run, where it was perhaps more toned down in terms of some of the personalities that they paid for. I would have a kind of salary cap for the presenters, and I'd actually reorientate the funding away from salaries and more towards the kind of local regional channels that the BBC used to have. It used to have a lot of great local programming. So I would focus on bringing that back. I think that, this, by the way, is just a kind of personal opinion, what I'm talking about now, because obviously with the kind of remit of Abolish, but in terms of funding, the whole licence fee is completely, it's a very outdated way of doing things. It goes back to a time when a lot of people didn't have TVs, and it doesn't really make sense now. When everyone has a TV, I'd be inclined to scrap the licence fee and just bring BBC funding under general taxation. I think that'd be a more efficient way of doing it from a kind of administrative point of view, and fairer as well. Because obviously taxation is more progressive, whereas the BBC licence fee is just a blanket fee. It's the same for everybody. So that's what I would say on the BBC.
And Alan?
Interesting. I've not heard anyone suggest we fund the BBC from general taxation before. My own instinct is the BBC needs to get its own house in order. As John said, some of the salaries are obscene, but it's not just the salaries, it's the whole ethos of the organisation. It seems to have been very much captured by a certain metropolitan liberal left outlook, if you like. And it's not just me saying that, it's former BBC presenters have said, if I'm looking for a headline, somebody used to just give me The Guardian and say, read that. The Guardian has a 50,000 circulation. Why don't they do it off the Sun instead? But the BBC has a couple of issues, and I'm very tempted to say scrap the licence fee entirely and go to subscription. I don't know if that would necessarily improve a lot of the products, but I'm pretty certain it would mean that people are not paying for something that they don't actually want to watch.
And Stephanie?
I think the BBC for a very, very long time was really well respected right across the world. I'm not sure that that's still the situation now. I think if you're going to have an institution like the BBC, it has to be about people having integrity and fairness. It has to be about investigative journalism, real investigative journalism, and the licence fee. I don't know, was that really the question that you asked there, Martin?
No,
the licence fee?
A bit about the licence fee and about how it's funded and whether it should just be reformed and changed, and your views on the BBC in general, I would suggest.
Well, what I would say is just now you can choose not to pay a BBC licence, and there's quite a lot of people do that. However, that's about all live TV, so it just doesn't seem to quite sit right. I think it's something that really needs to be explored, broken down, look at what's working just now and look at what options might actually work better for the future. I
mean, personally, I know I'm not standing for election, but I like to chip in on this to you guys, because basically, obviously, in a sort of a new age sort of broadcasting sort of area here, I've always found that the BBC in recent years has become lost from what its remit is, in terms of trying to raise the quality of programming and give an alternative to what's on other channels and what's available, to give a quality alternative to what's there. So where I saw it really was when the BBC decided to schedule EastEnders at the same time as Coronation Street. And you go, that's not given an alternative quality version, that's given a competitor to a private organisation. So that's my point. I think it needs really stripped back, and it feels like the BBC World Service is something that exists from the remnant days of when the UK was an empire and it would broadcast around the world to its colonies, and we pile tons of money into broadcasting around the world. And you go, well, do we have to have the BBC World Service anymore? Is it that necessary?
I think the thing about the BBC is that it had people's trust for a very, very long time, and between all of us tonight, I don't think anybody has really given the impression that they have trust in the BBC. So when you're in that situation, things have obviously gone quite wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking to you all. It's been good back and forth. You've all been very polite to each other. It's got heated at times, but that's politics. That's the way it goes. I'm going to give you all 2 minutes going round to tell us why you should vote for you. And what I would say is, please don't mention another party when you're doing it, because then I have to give somebody else a response. Okay, so we'll kick off with you, Stephanie.
Okay, why should people vote for me? I'm standing to be an MSP who's a member of the SNP. I believe that we stand up for the people of Scotland, that Scotland's people should have their choice about Scotland's future, about democracy. For all the reasons that I've mentioned earlier, we've spoken about the NHS, we've maybe missed out a bit in education there as well, which I thought we were going to cover tonight. So just saying very, very quickly about education, we're looking at giving kids laptops, and we've got the curriculum for excellence. There's more money going to be invested in mental health for our young people too, and I think, talking about the NHS, talking about the economics, I think we've had really, really strong leadership that has brought us through this pandemic really well in the circumstances. And I would ask people to put their trust in me and to put their trust in Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister, and look for an SNP government. And for that reason, I would say both votes SNP. Okay,
thanks very much. And John, I'll just bring your microphone back on. And John, from the Abolish Scottish Parliament Party, if you could just give us your 2 minutes on why people should vote for you.
Well, what Abolish are doing in this election is extremely unique and important. We're giving Scots this historic opportunity to vote against devolution for the first time since Blair's 1997 referendum. There's so many people have contacted us and told us, that they voted for devolution back then in 1997 because they believed Labour's promise that devolution would, to quote George Robertson, kill nationalism stone dead. Clearly, it has had the opposite effect. It has just kind of sent us down this trajectory of the never-ending and of kind of this aggressive nationalism of the SNP. So a lot of people want to kind of put right that wrong from 1997. For all voters currently under the age of 40, this is their first opportunity ever to have a say on devolution. I mean, I was too young to vote in the 97 referendum. I was in primary school at the time. So it is a real historic opportunity to vote for something different, not just for the same unionist parties that have been sat in Holyrood for years providing this weak, useless opposition, not for more of the other kind of run-of-the-mill, smaller unionist parties that are supporting the pro-devolution status quo. We're offering something genuinely different. We are offering a positive vision for Scotland and for the UK by using that 100 million saved every year to fuel Scotland's recovery after COVID, to put that money towards the NHS and education, fund 1,000 nurses, 1,000 teachers for Scotland instead of these lavish six-figure salaries, these exorbitant expenses, these vanity projects for Sturgeon and her cronies. So, the reason to believe that we can get the votes to win seats is there. The 2019 panel-based poll authorised for the Sunday Times showed there's 22% support amongst the electorate for abolition, including a majority, 57% of Conservative voters. We only need 5 to 6% to win vital list seats off the Greens. So back Abolish if you want to end the Holyrood gravy train and win a vital and much-needed anti-devolution voice in Scottish politics.
Okay, thanks very much, John. Naughty though, you mentioned someone. So we'll go to Alan and Reform UK. Why should we vote for you, Alan?
There are a couple of reasons that make us unique. One, we are completely anti-lockdown. We object to the lockdown. We don't want another one. We believe that the other parties will vote for another lockdown. They will wreck our economy again in 6 months' time when the winter flu season kicks in. We really need a change in politics in this country. And I like the guys from Alliance from Unity. They're nice guys. I like John. I think his heart's in the right place. But we are a national party. We're not going anywhere. We will be running candidates right across the UK. We need to prove that Scots are just other members of the United Kingdom. We believe in the Union. We believe that winning seats in Holyrood is just the start, and that we can totally reform our entire political system. And it's not going to happen just this term. It will take 5, 10, 15 years to do that. But you stick with us, vote with us now, and we will get that ball rolling. And once we have got it rolling, the momentum will grow, and we will destroy the party political system that has led this country down such an appalling path over the last 20 odd years.
Thanks very much, guys. Now, I would like to point out now, because this is the second Hustings that we've had here tonight. Now, what's been amazing for me in this run-up to the election is that we have talked to parties that are in their infancy. The Abolish Scottish Parliament Party, the Reform UK Party, the Independent Scottish Party, the Alliance for Independence, the Saving Scotland, Scotia Future. Just quite a lot of them have appeared in the last year. And I know that sometimes when a small party comes on, and you'll see it on the comments section when you look below, there will be some sort of slightly abusive stuff, and it happens. And it happens to every political party. But I would say to people that are commenting about saying these pop-up parties and things like that, that obviously you are representative of a part of society. You may not be at the stage where you're representative of a part of society where you're going to win an election, in terms of when I don't think anyone is under any illusions that Reform UK is going to return 60 MSPs come the 6th of May. But you are representative of a percentage of society, no matter how small or large that is. So this is what I think we want to try and do at North Lanarkshire Live, is try and give a voice to everyone. So it's not dominated by just one or two parties. And it's been great to talk to you. And hopefully if any of you or all of you get elected to the Scottish Parliament, you'll come back on and chat to us again. Is that agreed?
I think that would be fun, yeah.
See, I like to tie it up before the election. That way you can
all three of us get in and do the same thing again.
Yeah. So thanks very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good night.
So that was our second series. We are hoping to have another Hustings if possible, if we can get a roster of 4 people. Obviously, the Lib Dems had to cancel tonight. We've still got emails out to the Labour Party and the Green Party. The Green Party have got back to us. They're looking forward to coming on at some point. Hopefully we can get them on for a Hustings. We've sent out basically to every party that's standing for election on the 6th of May. So if anyone's commenting below saying, why wasn't my party represented? Well, this is one-sided, and where's the right to apply? Everyone that is standing in the Scottish Parliament elections on the 6th of May has been invited onto this show. And they're free to come on. And tomorrow night we have our one-to-one sessions again. We're doing a one-to-one show tomorrow night, so tune in for that. As usual, I am completely unprepared and do not know who's on, but I'm sure it's on the page somewhere, so check it out. But until tomorrow night, good night.